we are in charge of workplace safety. If we're in that position where a plant manager, a production manager, a safety, health and safety manager or advisor, that's what we're looking for. And it shouldn't be just about the minimum we can get by with compliance. That's okay. That's a place to start.
Right.
But that's not always the best practice.
Right.
And so, yeah, you talked about the cost, and I think some people also get concerned about the cost when they think DHA and, oh, I've got to change what I'm doing. Oh, I've got to get a collector or get new suppression or new venting put in the collector or whatever the case may be. I think there's a pathway and a progression. It's not something they should freak out and say, oh, I've already spent all my capital budget for this year. I can't do it. I'll have to wait till next year.
Right.
There's ways to get started on that process now.
Yes.
And then you can budget for that over time. You can present to the authorities, Matt with the VPP process, he can show them what he's working on and where he's going, right?
Right. That it shows progress over time. And again, there are, again, I'll say our approach to conducting a DHA. Let me give you the example of mixers, right? Mixers are an inherent hazard in a process. But depending on the formulation, how you add the solids or any liquids or anything, and the speed of the mixers, you have various degrees. You may actually not have a hazard that needs to be protected versus one. If you just go into it, and this is where screening your consulting resource is important. If you have someone who goes in and just understands the regulations or the code, but they don't understand the background of the regulation and code. So the NFPA standards, and one thing too, I want to, the NFPA standards are clear, but what happens is they're not written in a format that everybody's used to seeing in terms of the OSHAs and things.
Sure.
The NFPA actually provides more technical guidance and direction if you go through and you take the time to read the standards. So there's some good guidelines there, but in every one of the standards, it gives you the basis of where that recommendation came from. And if you hire a resource to do a DHA and that resource doesn't understand the science behind the recommendation, and they come in and they see your mixers and say they all need to be protected, and they don't ask you those critical questions like, talk to me about your production rates here, talk to me about how full the mixer is, talk to me about the tip speeds, then they're not going to do the necessary analysis to determine, well, you got mixers, you got dust collectors, you got sifters. Well, where do I start? If you're not peeling back the layers to look at the total operation, then somebody's going to get this report with all of these recommendations, and it's going to be frustrating. But our approach is to try and dig down to that level to say, well, you may need to address the mixers, but here's where you've got some mitigating circumstances because we've done the analysis. So the mixers could be a phase 2 in the 2023 budget, as long as you're doing these things now, but your priority are, those dust collectors. And in terms of dust collectors, is dust collector 1, 3, and 7. So we do that deep dive analysis so that when you walk away, if there are some mitigating circumstances and it's like, I can wait until the next budget cycle, or if there's some things where, shut this down, here's some immediate things you need to do. And we've done that. I've been on site where we had to shut down an operation. We had to do some calculations. We had to make some calls. One of the things about the DEKRA network, we've built, a good rapport with a lot of different folks. And we've made calls and taken advantage of those partnerships that we have with people to get clients back up and running with a mitigating circumstance. One case in particular, client had a standard explosion vent on a dust collector inside the building, which means, and we did the calculation, about a 20 or 30 foot fireball aimed right at packaging employees. Again, not aware that the hazard was there.
Sure.
Shut the process down. It worked with, in terms of their scheduling, all this, but made a call to one of our partners who's in the space of providing flameless vents. They had one on the shelf that met the requirements for the client. Then at that point, we stepped back. Those two developed your mutual agreements and purchase orders. There was one on the truck coming to the client within a week.
Love it.
And so it's that kind of approach. So we're not just going to come in and just say, hey, you got a problem and walk away. We try to partner with you. Our goal is to become that trusted advisor for life. So I don't want people to listen to this and say, I'm going to have to, process modifications may be necessary. Capital investments may be necessary, but until you peel back the layers and do the analysis, you won't know where to go. And our goal is to give you more of a playbook so you know where to budget and put your funds.
And I think that plays into your strength, what you're talking about, that prescriptive analysis. So, it may not require capital expenditure. It may be, like you were talking about, slow the mixer down, or, change your ingredients in your mix a little bit.
Right.
If that can work for you, that's a way to do it, to mitigate
Yes.
a lot of the risk rather than having to do big capital expenditures
Right.
and that sort of thing.